As a reading this morning, I'd like to offer this from Wendell Berry. No, no, there is no going back. Less and less you are that possibility you were. More and more you have become those lives and deaths that have belonged to you. You have become a sort of grave containing much that was and is no more in time, beloved then, now, and always. And so you have become a sort of tree standing over the grave. Now more than ever, you can be generous toward each day that comes, young to disappear forever, and yet remain unaging in the mind. Every day you have less reason not to give yourself away. A number of years ago, a dear friend and former colleague, Lorelei Bonet, was preparing a lecture to give to an upcoming oncology social work conference. What are you going to talk about, Lorelei? Ecotones, she said. I never heard that word before. What, is that some kind of a retro punk environmental cover band? Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the Ecotones. No, she went on to explain it's those transitional zones in nature between two adjacent ecosystems or communities that are neither one thing nor the other, like where a meadow meets a forest or where a river meets the sea. She was using it as a metaphor for places that cancer patients often find themselves caught between competing realities. I love it as a metaphor for any of us as we move into life's deeper mysteries, crossing boundaries and thresholds into territory that is not exactly one thing or the other, despite all of our need and desire to see it as such. And yet I find it is in those liminal places that perhaps we have greater access to something we might dare to call truth, or maybe even brush up against the sacred. In the summer of 2005, I took a week-long seminar on Cape Cod with Thomas More, well-known psychologist and author. He's made his life's work a study of the nature of soul. He constructed the workshop in such a way that we only had half days together because he wanted us to spend the other half of the day out on the Cape, letting it work its magic on us. He didn't have to tell me twice. I fell in love with the place, particularly the marshes and wetlands, ecotones that are not exactly land or sea, changeable by the shifting of the tide. That love affair continues to this day, up until quite recently, nearly every year ever since. Scott and I have spent a week in Provincetown, at the very tip of Cape Cod. And one of my favorite things to do there is to float effortlessly on the incoming or outgoing tide over the marsh, swallowed up by this magical netherworld. A sunrise or a sunset can be a kind of ecotone too. Not exactly day, not exactly night, not exactly light, not exactly dark. I love the word evening for its unintended implication, an evening out of day into night. And yet it is in that tender, narrow window of time we get to experience all those magnificent colors and deep, rich shadows. In February 2019, 7 years ago, I got to take a wonderful 2-week solo journey across southern India, from east to west, starting in Chennai, ending in Cochin. The penultimate stop on my itinerary was a teeny village called Muthuvankudi, high in the mountains, the Western Ghats they're called, in Kerala. It's tea and spice country not far from the town of Munnar. I actually spent 2 nights in the Ecotones Lodge, if you could imagine. 8 Spartan rooms situated in the most stunning landscape imaginable. One night I was the only guest in the lodge. When I arrived, I immediately booked a guided walk with a local guide, Vishak. The first walk would be that afternoon, a spice and culture walk, he called it. We walked through villages and farms and plantations and jungles, talking every step of the way. Vishak was 27, bright, curious, smart, knew everything about every plant, animal, crop, bird. He had a wanderer's heart himself, and he dreamed of destinations far from Kerala, though he wasn't quite sure he had heard of Los Angeles. It was an enchanted afternoon. We even got caught in an afternoon thunderstorm and took refuge on the porch of one of the houses in the village. When the woman of the house saw me out on her porch, she brought out a chair for me to sit down. Like I say, it was an enchanted afternoon. The next morning would be our sunrise walk. He told me he'd pick me up at 5:30. I set my alarm for 5 o'clock, got up, took an ice-cold shower because 10 more minutes of sleep seemed more valuable than the slim chances of getting hot water. I got dressed and went outside a little early because my host, C. Joe, had promised me a hot cup of tea before the walk. The super full moon was still high in the sky, illuminating the whole landscape in this eerie, silvery glow, casting moon shadows everywhere. The breathing stillness of the morning soothed my spirit, the coolness, the silence. Thank goodness Vishak brought a flashlight, because once we got under the canopy of trees, it was so dark you could not see your hand in front of your face. We walked in silence mostly. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under our feet. But soon birds began to awake and call out to one another. There was the call to prayer from a nearby mosque. We walked a bit further, and there was a gong and chanting from a Hindu temple. We emerged out from under the canopy of trees back into the moonlight. We didn't need the flashlight any longer. Vishak took a hard left turn up a steep path. This way, Michael. We scrambled up over rocks and boulders, and we ended up on this enormous plinth of granite high on this precipice with this stunning view of the valley, the mountains around. We'll wait here for the sun, he said. Okay? Oh, it was more than okay. Emily Dickinson once wrote, "I'll tell you how the sun rose, one ribbon at a time." It wasn't like that for me that morning. I was transfixed by the mountains in the moonlight, enshrouded in cloud cover. Another ecotone. You couldn't tell where the land ended and the sky began. And then very soon a pink glow began to emerge from behind one of the clouds. And just then this renegade appendage of clouds swirls up in the sky, its edges catching the hidden sunlight. It looked like a fire-breathing dragon for a moment. And just as soon it disappeared. And then the sun shone itself and announced the beginning of a brand new day. We sat there for maybe 45 minutes. Soon there was more singing, men's voices in Latin this time from the Catholic Church down in the valley beneath us. And when they stopped, women's voices chimed in, blending in this exquisite harmony. It was a moment of sheer perfection. Everyone needs this every once in a while, Vishak said. Yes, they do, I agree. Vishak, does this ever get old for you? Is this just like another day at work for you? No, I like this, he said. It's never quite the same. I felt the oddest combo platter of feelings in that moment. On one hand, so profoundly grateful to be able to be here and experience this, feeling this urgent need to imprint my memory with every sight, every color, every smell, every sensation, acutely aware I will never pass this way again. And of course, that's true of every moment in which we live, isn't it? Somehow it seemed more true on that rock. And as one who is essentially greedy, always wanting more, what's next? I find myself reflecting, gosh, even with the best of luck, the years left for me are fewer than the years I've had most of the clothes in my closet. So there was some sadness too, but also longing for all my loved ones. I wanted them to be there on that rock with me, especially my mom. But don't get me wrong, the essential feeling was one of gratitude and enoughness. This moment is enough. This journey is enough. This lifetime is enough. Vishak, I said, do you know what that word Ecotones means, the name of the lodge where I'm staying? Yes, I think it means like eco-friendly, no? No, it actually means a place in nature where two ecosystems meet that aren't exactly one or the other, like where a river meets the sea or a grassland meets a mountain, or where your life, as different as it is from mine, we meet here, now, on this rock, just for this moment. Yes, he said. I wasn't entirely sure he understood the depth of my meaning, but I knew I was experiencing something akin to Holy Communion. Living with cancer can be a kind of ecotone too, caught between competing realities all the time. I can't tell you how many hundreds of patients struggle with how to hold their lives, how to make decisions going forward. Do I live as if I have all the time in the world, or do I live as if today's my last day? What if it's neither? What if it's both? And if I have to live like today is my last day, how do I live with that kind of pressure to make it so important and profound and meaningful? Wouldn't it rob me of the everyday simple pleasures, the luxury of wasting time? The process of dying can be a kind of ecotone too, a process that can take years, as anyone can attest who's walked beside a loved one through their dying process, watching them slip away by inches and feet, leaving you to wonder how much of the person I loved is even still there. Which is the authentic self? That was true for my mom over the last few years of her life, as dementia enshrouded her sense of clarity, even her sense of self, in a kind of fog, only parting every now and then to give us a glimpse of the mom we knew and remembered, just to be swallowed up again, until a recurrence of lung cancer and COPD showed her to the final exit. I saw her for the last time on March 30th, 2019, not long after I got back from India, and she would die 8 days later on April 7th. A year earlier, Mother's Day, 2018, Scott, my husband, and I went up to visit her. She lived on the Central Coast near Morro Bay. Just to get her out of the house, we took her into San Luis Obispo, took her out to lunch, walked around a little bit. Then we just parked on a bench right there in front of the Mission in that big Grand Plaza. It was exasperating, yes, to listen to the same closed-loop litany of complaints and disappointment and anger and resentment and stories I'd heard 10,000 times. But still, it was a gorgeous day. It seemed far more pleasant to sit here and have this conversation, if you will, than to sit for endless hours in her mobile home in front of HGTV. But then an idea dropped into my head from someplace else altogether. 16 years earlier, when my mom had survived lung cancer treatment, I took a couple days off of work to go see her with the express purpose of interviewing her exhaustively on videotape about her life. In those 2 days, I made 6 hours of tape. I never listened to them. I never watched them. 16 years later, I'm sitting on that bench. It occurs to me, Mom, you maybe want to go home and watch that tape of that interview we did 16 years ago? Of course, she had no recollection of the interview or the tape, but she was game. Sure, honey, that sounds like fun. Let's do that. So that's what we did. My intention was twofold. I was wondering what kind of gift might there be, maybe even a kind of magic, for my mom to give her her own story back to herself. What might that look like? And selfishly, I was hoping to reconnect with that version of my mom I so dimly remembered. That's not accurate, of course. I remembered her. I just couldn't connect that version of my mom with this adult, angry woman in front of me, her shadows spilling out everywhere. So that's what we did. Over that afternoon and evening, we got through 4 hours of the tape in 2 sittings. My mom was thoroughly confused, of course, at first. Now, where was this done and why did we do it again? Asking only inches away from where the camcorder had been set up. Look, Mom, it's your same front door over there. That's your same chair. But she was enthralled with the woman on the screen. This is so weird. I mean, I know that's me up there. And I remember these stories when she's telling them. But it doesn't feel like me. She seems so professional-like. I know, I was shocked too. But this is fun, honey. Thanks for doing it, she said. The hour grew late. She was tired. We went to bed. Next morning, she didn't remember a thing. Didn't remember watching it. Didn't remember that it existed. A month later, we went to see her again and would watch the last 2 hours. A whole other kind of experience for a host of reasons. Scott, my husband, had been recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He was in the back, in the corner, crying silently. I don't want that to be me. I don't want that to be me. And yet, 7 years later, it is. My mom's late partner, Glenn, made a surprise appearance in the interview. I've forgotten all about it. My mom howled, "Oh, hi, Glennie. I love you. I miss you." I did remember that my mom closed the interview with a very tearful valedictory to each of her 3 kids, wanting us to remember, above all else, how much she loved us. To my shock and amazement, the next morning, she remembered everything. "Wasn't that something last night?" she said. "I just can't get over it. And you know what, honey? It makes me feel like it's not so bad to be this old, because I just don't care anymore. Everything that used to matter so much just doesn't matter. So you know what? I feel free." Thank you, honey. The tide brought my mom back to me for a moment. We could float around, splash around in that Ecotone just for a moment before she drifted off again. February 2019, before I left for India, my sister Terry threw my mom the most amazing 90th birthday party. Friends from far and wide came, family she hadn't seen in years. As my sister was walking her into the party, my mom told her, "I'm looking forward to saying goodbye to everybody." After the party, she declined rather sharply over the next few months, and after a week in the hospital and a few days in rehab, she was sent home on hospice. Just to relieve my sister, who had done all the heavy lifting with respect to my mom's care in recent years, I took a couple days off of work to give her a break. I knew this would likely be the last time I would ever see my mom, though she did not. She did not understand she would not get better. She did not understand that she was on hospice. I, of course, had my hopes and expectations of how I wanted that time to be. I wanted to be so conscious, so present of the gravity of this threshold she was crossing, that we were crossing. I'm sure it will surprise no one to know that life doesn't always give us what we want. When she got home from the rehab, she was so disoriented. On one hand, she knew it was her house, but then she would ask questions like, "Was my bedroom always here? Was there always a window on that wall? Was my TV always there?" In the oddest way, I was having a parallel experience of disorientation. Is this really my mom? Is this really the last time I'm going to see her forever? I was present to her as a chaplain of sorts, as a caregiver, but not as her son exactly. I was so busy tending to the next task, getting the next treatment ready, getting the next meal ready, getting the next meds ready, answering the same question 3,000 times as patiently as I could. I was present, but just not as her son exactly. In the spring of 2006, I took my mom on a week-long trip to Spain. What a time we had. One afternoon, we were in Cordoba. We were walking back to the bus stop. There's a bit of chill in the air, and we were on the shady side of the street. So I said, "Mom, come on, let's cross the street. We'll go walk on the sunny side." And just like that, we both broke into spontaneous song. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worry on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. There I was, singing and dancing with my mom in the middle of the street, Cordoba, Spain. That last day, I was with her, Saturday. I was sitting at her breakfast table with her, trying to reminisce with her about some of the trips we had been on together, the wonderful times. Reminded her of that day in Cordoba, singing that song. While she wasn't exactly sure it was still her house, she knew every word to the song, and we sang it together one more time. Singing that song was a kind of ecotone too, a bridge between our very disparate realities, which in the end are not so disparate after all. But still, the day I had dreaded since I was 4 years old And the nuns at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Catholic Church in Long Beach explained to us kindergartners, we're all going to die. Even my mom. Well, that day was here. And I wasn't even there for it. Not in the way I wanted to be. But we did have our song. That summer, after she died that August, Scott and I had our week in Provincetown. I was out on the beach, huddled under my umbrella, tucked into the side of a sand dune in the pouring rain. Like my mom, I always loved the rain. I was sitting watching the tide come in over the marsh, waiting for it to get deep enough to go swim in the rain over the marsh. That afternoon, I was the only one out on the beach at Herring Cove. That morning, my brother Steve had sent my sister Terry and me an email. He'd come across a poem my mom had written. She'd always written poetry ever since she was a lovesick teenager working the box office at the old Egyptian Theater downtown Long Beach. Alone in the box office and in life, it would seem. Judging by the tone of this poem, I would guess she wrote it before Glenn came into her life, so she was maybe late 50s, early 60s, roughly my age. She called the poem Ageless, and she was reflecting on that soothing feeling she got whenever she was in the rain, that kind of comfort, a feeling that was just as vivid now as an old woman as it was when she was a young girl, leading her to conclude that we are ageless, perhaps, at least in the way that we hold life, respond to it. Over the last few years of her life, it was harder and harder to connect to that ageless part of her, now that she's been gone for nearly 7 years. When I think of her, it's hard to know which was the ageless part, which is the authentic self. Because there I was, sitting on the beach, soaking wet, staring at my phone, reading and rereading that poem, trying to connect with it, and I just couldn't that day. But my friend Rosa reminds me that a womb is an ageless place too. An ecotone, in fact, that is neither life nor non-life. And it's wet. What better place could there be, Michael, for you to sit and contemplate your mother than in that earthly womb of that sand dune, and that you were wet? That experience of the ecotone, that bridge between realities, I think can be akin to what a patient of mine once called a God moment. A moment in which not much really happens, but the stuff and business of life just falls away, leaving space for awareness of presence, that this moment is all that there is, just love, agelessness. A moment like floating effortlessly over the incoming tide on the marsh in Provincetown, or admiring a beautiful sunrise with Vishak in Kerala, India, or singing a song one last time with my mom. Ageless, perhaps, yes, after all, with gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. So be it. Thank you. Okay, well, sorry, I wasn't up with the program. Of the many condolence messages I received after my mom's death, this one from my friend Buck, who I sadly lost 4 years ago as well, means the most. I'm so sorry to hear about your mother's passing. She was wonderful, and I loved her. I smiled thinking of her. She loved you kids. Made that clear. I remember one Sunday morning when she was with you when you were speaking in Santa Monica. We sat next to each other, talking and joking, always comfortable that way together. Then things got underway. We quieted down. And I kept an eye on her. She was smiling, looking around at the congregation, listening intently, hungry for what you were saying, connecting. She could tell you had a gift, could communicate your heart, touch other hearts. She leaned into me and whispered, "That's my son up there." And it was said with an equal mix of happiness, wonder, admiration, and great pride. And then at the end, without skipping a beat, she said, "I just wish they sang some songs I know." And yesterday would have been her birthday. "I loved your mom," he says. "So in honor of my mom, let's all sing a song that she knew.